Welcome back. My name is Mr. Lau. Today we're going to talk about how to judge debate. This is just a brief introduction. So this is usually this explanation is it's like a 15-minute explanation usually that I give to brand new judges who know absolutely nothing about debate, and it's usually I might give this explanation to a judge right before a tournament because they have zero experience, and because I haven't had a time to meet with them, and I haven't had a time to teach them, and I haven't been able to show them anything before, and I just want to give them at least a little bit more information on how to judge, like the very, very basics. So I'm not going to go into depth on specific types of judging for Lincoln-Douglas policy or public forum or even Congress. I'm going to just talk about them all in general terms just for a brand new introductory, brand new judge. Okay? So there are three main ways in which you can judge when it comes to debate. And this is any debate. When you watch a debate, it doesn't matter what format it is. You could be public forum, could be Lincoln-Douglas, could be policy, could be Congress. Doesn't matter, right? The three main things that you can look for is you can look for presentation skills, argumentation and analysis, and evidence, right? So those are the three key areas that I teach that you can look for when you're judging. So if a debater has better presentation skills, they speak clearer, they speak loud enough, they're understandable, right? Like they have good posture, they present very well. You can tell the moment you look at them, you can tell when somebody is a better presenter. If someone is a better presenter, has better arguments and analysis, and has better evidence, then they're going to win the debate, right? If I have two debaters and one is better in all three things, they're going to win that debate, right? And you may not even have to pay attention to the three things while you're judging them if they're better in all three, because when somebody is better in all three, it's so clear who the better debater is. Because as you watch them, they're the one that's communicating to you, they're the one that's making you nod, either actually or even in your head makes you agree with them, you're going to absolutely probably vote for them, right? So those three things: presentation, arguments and analysis, and evidence. Now, the real judging comes in, and the real problem occurs usually when one debater is significantly better in one thing and slightly worse in the other two. Right? So for example, let's say you have a debater who is significantly better at presentation and slightly worse in his arguments and evidence, only slightly. Then what ends up happening is oftentimes a judge has to stop and think and be like, well, wow, he spoke so clear. I definitely understood him better, but I felt like he was only slightly worse in some of his arguments and his evidence. Now that's where what comes into play is I always tell judges to pick the order of importance in which you value these three skills, right? Do you value presentation above all else, right? And that's fine. You can make the argument that this is a public speaking event. It is a presentation activity. It is absolutely, presentation absolutely matters. You cannot go up in your shorts and t-shirt and slippers and just be like, oh yeah, I win, like you won't go into a job interview that way. Presentation matters. It does matter, right? And so this is a presentation competitive event. So you need to have presentation. So you could absolutely argue that it is the most important and paramount thing that you should vote for. In this case, if I value that the most, then this person is going to win because they had the best presentation and they were only slightly worse than the others. Now, I could also make an argument that analysis and argumentation is the most important thing that I value the most. That doesn't mean I don't value the other things. It just means I value it the most. It's the one I rate highest. So you should rank them 1, 2, and 3, right? And for you personally as a judge. So if I rank arguments and analysis as most important, then I might say, well, yeah, their personal thinking is what's most important. Are they logical? Are they reasonable? Can they communicate that clearly to me, right? Is their analysis, do they have the best analysis? Are they bringing up the most important arguments? And their opponent brought up, maybe their opponent won their arguments, but did their opponent bring up the most relevant and important arguments? If they brought up the most relevant and important arguments and they presented them and they understood them, then you could argue that that's why they should win the debate, because they had the best arguments, they were the most relevant arguments, they were short, clean, concise, they did all of the things that they were supposed to, so arguments and analysis. The third thing, evidence. Now, I know many judges, particularly from when I was in high school, policy judges often were primarily evidence-based judges, right? Like evidence was by far the most important thing. Did you do your research, right? You might have the best arguments, but if you have no evidence or you have very, very low evidence or poor evidence, they would not vote for you, right? It doesn't matter, right? Like you might have brought up the most, but the person who brings up the best evidence, the person who brings up the most relevant evidence, who brings up the most recent evidence, the people who had the best evidence, who've gone home, done their research, and come back and they've used that research, they're going to reward those people. It doesn't matter if they speak well, it doesn't matter, like there were some very, very heavy evidence-based judges, right? There's nothing wrong with being any types of these judges. You absolutely can be any types of these judges, because as I was saying from the beginning, the best debaters, as I coach, when I coach and teach students, you need to be able to be better in all three. You need to develop all three skills. You cannot neglect any of them, right? And so it's fine to judge in any one of those ways. So you need to decide for yourself as a judge. Do you think that presentation is most important and then analysis and then evidence? Or do you think evidence is most important and then arguments and then presentation is the least important thing to you? In this case, I've seen quite frequently where, let's say somebody has the best evidence and they have good arguments, but they're very bad at presenting. They stumble over their words, they stutter, they slur their words together, they're not very clear. Or in the case of some of you who watch some policy debate, you see where they're spreading, where they're speaking so fast, they're speaking like an auctioneer, and they're like, blah, 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 blah. Presentation is very low on their list. The most important thing to them is evidence and arguments, right? And for judges who judge that way, doesn't bother them one bit that the presentation is hard to understand. That doesn't bother them. All that matters is that the evidence and the arguments are good, right? In which case, right, that's why that format of debate has evolved to that form, because that's the way that those judges judge. But on the flip side, you might say, no, in that debate where the person spoke like an auctioneer and the other person did not have very many arguments or very much evidence, but they presented clearly and understandably, I vote for them, right? So you need to decide for yourself as a judge what you feel is the most important. What do I personally, what does Mr. Lau actually choose? How do I rate these three things? Now, I'm not saying follow me. I'm just saying this is my own personal view. I personally rank arguments and analysis first. Then I rank evidence, right? And then I rank presentation. All three are important to me. But if I have to choose, if I have to rate them as in importance, that's the way in which I rate them. I rate them arguments and analysis, then evidence, and then presentation. You decide how you rank them. And then after you make that decision, before you even go into a round to judge, you'll have a lot easier time judging. Because then, of course, if somebody's better in all three, easier to vote for them. But when you have somebody who is better in one and worse in the other two, then you can make a decision without sitting there for half an hour or an hour thinking about, I don't know who wins, I don't know. You can already decide. You can say, hey, I know that I rank presentation the most valuable, or I know I rank arguments and analysis the most valuable, or I know I rank evidence the most valuable. And then you can make a decision because you know that person was better in that, right? So make that decision before you go into the round. That way you don't have to make those long decisions and really stop and consider. If you look at a particular argument, and this can work broadly for the whole debate, and it can work for individual arguments, right? So like, let's say one argument was the key argument in the debate, right? Let's say it was the value debate in Lincoln Douglas, or let's say it was solvency in policy, or let's say it was whatever it is, one single argument, and you say, on this argument, who had the better presentation, who had the better arguments and analysis, who had the better evidence? On that, just that one argument. And then you can easily decide, going down all the way down the flow, and decide who won each individual argument. And then overall, you can decide who won the debate overall, right? So make the decisions. Don't punish yourself and don't think, hey, I didn't understand what they were saying. That is the debater's fault. They are responsible for communicating to you. They are responsible for making it clear to you. If they are not clear, that's a really huge ding on their presentation. Huge ding on their presentation. That's their responsibility. Okay? So this is just a very, very brief introduction. There's so much more that I could tell you, but if you were to go into a debate knowing this, hopefully you will be able to judge the debate much better than before this brief presentation.